What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Like a lot of you, I learned about the potential changes to RB tank damage models yesterday. Now, these were just potential changes. None of these were definitive. None of them were definitely coming to the game. They were just proposals. And instead of just having a knee-jerk reaction, I decided to take a day and think it over and collect my thoughts because I don't want to have an overreaction and say anything dumber than I normally do. Gaijin has kind of been under attack for quite some time now. They've been under siege from the community because of this whole FPE and parts grind for tanks, especially in the later tiers, tier 5 and 6 has been pretty brutal. And they've really taken a beating. A lot of their videos have been downvoted. They've had a lot of negative comments. Reviews on Steam are bad. I mean, it's been pretty brutal for the company and in turn for the game. But it feels like they've kind of overreacted in their own way. You know, they've had time to think it over, and they've come out with all sorts of changes. Some of them have already been implemented. These ones have just been proposed, and I'll put a list on the screen of the proposed changes so that you can take a look at what exactly I'm referring to, in case you didn't see the dev blog the other day. Basically, what they're doing is they're going to give tank commanders who don't have parts researched basically a quick fix toolbox that allows them to get their tank out of harm's way and to rotate their gun and to even shoot their gun if they don't have parts. You know, this is just a band-aid fix, if you will. Only there's nothing, as I understand it, there's nothing you actually have to do as the tank commander. The game just sort of takes over, and I don't know, it seems kind of silly, but for a tank commander who doesn't have parts, these changes actually sound kind of good, right? You know, if you get your engine disabled, you can still limp into cover, provided that you're able to get the enemy tank to stop killing you, and wait for 20 seconds for the quick fix to take effect, and then however long it takes you to actually drive into cover, considering your engine is running at 40% of its original power. Does that seem like a huge advantage? I don't know. For me, I don't like these changes. I don't like any of these changes. For me, what this does is it takes away from what RB tanks is, and it makes it feel a little bit too similar to arcade battles or AB. Now, I don't dislike or hate arcade tanks. I actually enjoyed arcade tanks for a very long time. However, I eventually left arcade because I disliked the game mechanics. I wanted a different experience, not necessarily a better one, just a different one, and that's an important distinction. Now, if you want me to be specific, one of the things I disliked with arcade was the inability to properly disable an enemy tank's gun. Whether you shoot the gun barrel or the breech, it seems like there's relatively little effect to the gun, in the sense that it can still fire back safely, it can still kill you. You know, how effective it is, you know, that's debatable, but it still can kill you, and it's really frustrating to disable a gun, you know, supposedly disable a gun, and then have him shoot and kill you. I really dislike that, and so one of the reasons I went to realistic battles was because I knew that I could disable a gun properly, that he could not kill me. You know, if I break your gun barrel or breech, you can't fire your gun safely without fear of blowing up your tank. And I really like that feature. Disabling a tank's weapon isn't just a way to troll someone. It's a legitimate strategy, or rather it's a legitimate option. In a perfect world, we wouldn't have problems with queue times. We would get battles instantly. We wouldn't have to worry about getting up-tiered. But that just isn't reality, is it? In reality, there's always going to be someone on a team who feels overwhelmed because they're up against a tank with better armor and a better gun. And their options are limited. You may know the weak spots of the enemy tank. You may know how the map works. You may be able to flank the enemy tank. But what if that same tank that has the better gun and the better armor also flanks in the same direction that you do? and they're hull down. They don't have a cupola. What do you do in a head-on engagement? One of the options that you always have in realistic battles is to shoot the gun barrel. And depending on the tank, you can also disable the breach. It's an option, and options are great in this game. The option to disable a tank's weapon, whether it be the barrel itself or the breach, it's huge. And one of the changes that they're proposing is actually changing the way that the barrel mechanics work. And I don't like that one bit. Not just because it takes away that as an option, which is a problem in my opinion, but it begins to muddy the waters in between what arcade battles are and what realistic battles are. The changes that they're proposing are basically a copy and paste of some of the arcade mechanics. And I'm really not a fan of this whole idea of muddying the waters in between arcade and realistic battles. To me, one of the best things War Thunder has done is they have very distinct, very different game modes for aircraft, tank, helicopter, and now even naval units. You've got arcade, realistic, and simulator battles for aircraft and tanks. You've got arcade and realistic for naval, as well as helicopters. But also helicopters can be used, I believe, in simulator tank battles. So you've got options, and that is what I love about this game. Depending on your playstyle, depending on your personality, you've got arcade, realistic, and simulator battles, all as options for you. You choose whatever mode you want, depending on what kind of mechanics you want. I'll be the first to admit that the modification grind for parts and FPE, it's like a kick to the balls sometimes, isn't it? Well, it used to be. Today, it's really not that bad anymore. It's still rough. I'll be the first to admit, but it's not nearly as bad as it was, and that's due to some recent changes that they've already implemented. Not only did they reduce the RP requirements for Tier 5 and 6 parts and FPE, but they also made it so that you can jump from Tier 1 modifications to Tier 2 by only researching one modification in Tier 1. In the past, if you wanted FPE and parts, you would start by researching parts in Tier 1, and usually either tracks or adjustment of fire in Tier 1, because you needed 2 modifications researched in order to drop down to Tier 2 and get FPE. Now you can just get parts in Tier 1, drop down, you get FPE in Tier 2, and you're set. You've got the 2 most important modifications for your tank grind. Those of you who want free FPE and free parts, you're not going to get them. I'm sorry. Unless someone has some sort of a giveaway for free Golden Eagles, and hey, here, go buy yourself some free parts, or go buy yourself parts and FPE. You're not going to get free parts or FPE. It's just not going to happen. Gaijin is all about making that money, and I don't see anything that's going to sway them from changing their stance on this. Frankly, I think it's time to stop beating this dead horse that is free FP and parts, and start discussing other things, other issues in the game that need to be worked on. Let's rework ARB. Let's talk about the Silver Lion economy in Tier 5 and 6 tanks. The list of topics is endless, folks. Let's start talking about something else. But in the meantime, let's leave AB mechanics to AB. Let's leave RB mechanics to RB. And let's move on. Let's not muddy the waters any further. But that's just my opinion. Let me know in the comment section what you think about all this. As always, guys, I hope you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, click that thumbs up button. And of course, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Take care, guys.